All right. Additionally, some other important things to consider. So Echo sessions are an interactive learning community, and so we encourage everyone to leave your webcam on and have a microphone available when possible. The breakout groups at the end of the session are a great opportunity for discussion, and we also encourage that everyone use the chat function if you need assistance throughout the call or have any questions or comments during the presentation. Please use that to let us know where you are at. And then finally, if you'd like to rename your profile to your first and last name and the organization you represent, you can just hover over your video icon right now, click on the three dots, click rename, and type that in. Now I will be briefly handing it over to Dr. Jennifer Halandi. Dr. Halandi is a researcher and psychologist with a specialty in early identification of developmental delays and disabilities. She leads the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network and the Minnesota Accurately Project. She's also faculty in our Midland Leadership Education and the Neurodevelopmental Disability Program. Welcome, Dr. Jennifer Halandi.
Thank you, Drake.
Yeah.
Thanks for the nice introduction. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see you. It is a beautiful day in Minneapolis today, beautiful June day. Blue sky and puffy clouds, and I hope it's beautiful where you are as well. Again, thank you for joining us. Congratulations to many of you that have ended your school years. I know some of you work year round, but I know some of you in June end the school year, so happy summer. As Drake said, we are Project Scope, which stands for Supporting Children of the Opioid Epidemic. Sorry, difficulty talking today. We focus on neonatal abstinence syndrome and or alternative name, Neonatal Opioid Withdrawal Syndrome. So we use acronyms NAS and NOWS. We're a community of early intervention providers supporting children and families, and we use an ECHO virtual training model. I know many of you who've been here before have heard this. What is ECHO? Extension for Community Health Outcomes. What it is, it's a model used across many different disciplines, started out in medicine, and it really focuses on promoting health equity, taking knowledge and information from one community, in this case, university settings, out into the broader community, and then also learning from the community about what you're seeing. So it's a bi-directional learning experience. Next slide. And again, we use technology. We work to reduce disparities. We always have a case study or family story. The medical field calls it a case study, but we call it a family story in our field. But conceptually, that's how we think about it. And then we always monitor with an evaluation that you'll receive after this using data to improve programming. Next slide. So this is our last session of Project Scope. Thank you. I know many of you have been with us the entire time. Thank you so much. We've learned together. We just appreciate your time and sharing your wisdom and experiences and knowledge. We may be doing one more in September. If people are interested in rejoining, we'll let you know. But for now, this is our last session in June. So I'm excited to have you here. Next slide. Our agenda is pretty typical. We do the welcome and intros. I get to introduce our speaker for today, which I'll do in a second. We'll do our case study, family story, and then we'll get you out of here by 4 or before. So with that, I would love to welcome our speaker today, Sameerah Bilal-Roby, Director of the Wilder African American Babies Coalition and Projects and Program Director of Integrated Care HighRisk Pregnancies Initiative. And do you spell that into, is it ICHRP, Sameerah? Is that the acronym for that? I have a little bit of a longer bio, if you don't mind. Is it okay if I read it, or do you just want to get started?
You can try, go for it.
I'll go for it because you have many accomplishments that I want to highlight. So again, Sameerah Bilal-Roby is the director of the Wilder African American Babies Coalition and Projects and is the program manager for the Integrated Care HighRisk Pregnancies Initiative. Her focus is on early childhood brain development and toxic stress, a really important topic. Also infant mortality, low birth weight, equity and disparities in training and health, specifically in the African American community. Sameerah is an ACE trainer highlighting trauma and toxic stress awareness. And Sameerah, that's a great connection because we have many other speakers talk about that, and also sits on many community action committees. This necessitates accountability to the community, parents, leaders, and healthcare workers to address skills and training that influence the high statistics of low birth and unhealthy deliveries of babies and all the social determinants that affect our community from perinatal, postpartum, and beyond. Welcome, Sameerah. We are so happy to have you here today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much. I feel honored. So I'm going to get started really quick here. Drake, can you go to the next slide? So I would like people to go in the chat real quick and let's see who's in the room. Tell me who you're representing. And also real quick, what you plan or want out of this next 35 minutes. Next slide, please. So the Water African American Babies Coalition, which is also known in the community as AABC, and projects. It's presenting a training developed over 40 years of work experiences, building on cultural health or cultural well-being projects through listening sessions, activities addressing structural racism. Our intention is to help in intergenerational disadvantaged communities and address the generational wealth that aims to maintain inequities over, let's see, the thing is in my way there. Over the last hundreds of years. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go over the statistics. I think all of you have it. It's going to be, they have the slides and we're going to keep it moving. We don't have a lot of time. So Drake, hit the button. Just hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, hit the button. And so this, go back. That is all the work that we're doing. We are a part of an impact team with the Integrated Care House Pregnancy, which is part of North Point Medical Center, St. Paul Care Collaborative, Minnesota Community Cares, and Open City Health. The work that we do at AABC as part of that collaborative is the training education on the ground, working with healthcare workers, and I'll go more into what we're doing. I'm sorry that this turned out like that. It didn't look like it on mine, but we are customized training. We do the spring action luncheons, which I hope all of you are able to join us for. It'll be this coming probably fall, winter. We do the Black and Brown Birth Summit. We do PSAs, Facebook Radio ACEs, Youth Healing Vessels Summit. We do a youth healthcare awareness cohort. We look at technology, inclusion of men and mental health, advocacy. We do a lot. Our aim really is perinatal to the age of 7, looking at how we can help our communities in health and well-being. Next slide, please. So I'm going to move you guys down. So this is basically telling you the importance of how we look at our work, the positive, good, and healthy engagement that happens with our families. This young lady up at the top, that's what we want them to look like, feel like. I'm so sorry. I don't know, Drake, what happened. That wasn't on my screen. So I do know how to spell it.
Yeah, actually, let me just reshare something quick, and it might be in the right format. I think when I put it into our PowerPoint, it messed up some of the formatting. So give me just 2 seconds.
I don't think we should work. I think they're going to give us grace to get past this. So I just wanted to say it out loud, and we'll just keep moving.
Okay.
So what's important is, of course, community skill building, connecting relationships, making sure the right resources, book classes are out there. We want to make sure that's very important for our communities to be well, is that there's always a feelings of welcome into the immediate entry of our families. We want to help specifically some of our young people do kind of a command of their self and outcomes. We want to build on human capacity to communicate all the opportunities that everybody should have. And of course, dialoguing and action promotes strong communities. Next slide, please. So I'm here today to talk about substance abuse. Substance abuse affects African American women at an increasingly alarming rate. The interaction of substance abuse and traumatic events requires exploration. For many African American women, early life trauma plays a critical role in how and when they fall victim to the ravages of substance abuse. A study of 15 African American women used intense narratives to disclose experience of incest, rape, abuse, and other horrors that led to drug and alcohol use to extinguish pain. The themes include family history of substance abuse, lack of caring childhood environments, pain resulting from trauma, and coping and recovery. The women's stories provided insight for nurses in practice and research related to the psychological or psychosocial health of women. Next slide, please. Current trends and forces suggest that drug use and drug abuse among women may be rooted in a cultural context. Cultural patterns and experiences provide situations out of which women forge their sense of self, their identity, their concept of race and ethnicity, their notion of gender, and their sense of class. A woman's life experience and situation and cultural roles and beliefs generally influence drug abuse. ACE or ACE's awareness can help build on the cultural context of drug use by analyzing the socialization of Black women and the life circumstances and social demographic experiences faced. Specifically, this cultural context framework can form the foundation for the prevention of drug abuse and the extent to which health professionals need to understand drug abuse and to treat women effectively across class and racial and ethnic differences. This was written by Wingo, LAJ Cult Divers in 2001. So what are ACEs? I believe we talked about this before. The doctor in the picture, and I believe I showed this, Dr. Burke Harris, she describes her reaction to learning about ACEs. She didn't understand for a long time what was going on in her family, why people were reacting, why she was reacting, why the community was reacting. Like her, this was an eye-opener for me. It helped me understand myself. It helped me understand my children, my grandchildren, things that I see going on. Sometimes it's quite painful, but it can be healing. And I think it's very important when we talk about ACEs, that this ACEs was not done on the African-American community. It is not based on race. It was based in San Diego. The majority was European Americans who had health insurance, cars, jobs, all the wonderful things. And they did the research on them and they showed up strong ACEs. It's what was going on in homes and in the environment. So I think that's really important for people to know. It's based on the human factors and the environment and experiences. Next slide, please. Now, I think it's important to understand that if you go back one slide, Drake, I just want so we know throughout our lives, and this is just not from slavery, it can be Holocaust, many different things, that trauma is passed down genetically across generations. That's ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences. Go to the next slide, please. So as you probably know, if bad things happen to you as a child, it can impact your health for the rest of your life. Now we know that time does not heal all wounds. Research shows that kids who experience physical abuse or live with an alcoholic parent are more likely to have cancer as an adult. They are more likely to attempt suicide. They are more likely to drop out of school or end up in prison. Now, it didn't say everybody, it said more likely. The good news is that there are doctors, teachers, social workers, judges, parents, and others like all of you online, and those that will listen to this, who are using this research known as the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, ACEs, to create new tools to protect kids and families early and give anyone who suffers the chance to heal. Finding the communities and referrals where the tools are being used are effective only if we all work together. I'm not saying that all of you should go out and start diagnosing our children, diagnosing your family members. Someone behaves in a certain way. Oh, well, they have ACEs and we need to do this, we need to report. I'm saying understand it, be aware of it. And I believe greatly in referrals. Okay, next slide, please. So how does it affect health? Well, through stress, frequent or prolonged exposure to ACEs. Now, we all know a little stress, you know, that is minimum, comes, go. That's going to happen, right? But it's this long-term stress. And those experiences can include emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect, mother treated violently, household substance abuse, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, and incarcerated household members. Next slide, please. Exposure to ACEs can increase the risk of adolescent pregnancy, and it went offline. What happened, Drake?
I'm still showing it sharing. Can anyone else see it being
Yeah,
shared?
I can still see it.
Wow.
Okay.
It says exposure to childhood ACEs can increase the risk of.
I went into a total blank over here. Tell me the slide number and I will recover.
So it is
22. It's
22, but it also, but I think it's your slide 12 from your presentation. If that makes sense. Like 12 on your specific
Well,
slides.
I see it now. Go to
Okay.
the next slide.
Yep.
Okay. So how much time do I have?
23 minutes. So you got a lot of time.
Communicating with impact one-on-one. Now, what I'm trying to say is that ACEs, and we see what and where it can take us, right? So substance abuse is in there. And we know also with substance abuse that it is that the person feels like this may help them. It deadens the pain that they're going through often. And let me just say, substance abuse is in my family and in most of your family. It may not be right in your home, but it's there. And it is painful to watch. And it's even more painful a lot of times for the parent to watch. So here's where communicating with impact, okay? I bring it in because it's important how we are talking to our clients, talking to our families, talking to whoever. And I like to use the tool ask, acknowledge, and adapt, okay? Many conflicts between people reflect cultural values. This segment introduces strategies working through cultural conflict with audiences. I don't want you to think of audiences right now. I want you to think about you and one-on-one or you with the family. And I didn't ask you, Jen, who are they representing, the people online? Can you tell me real quick in the chat?
Yeah. Oh, yes. So most of them come to this as early intervention providers, but do you want me to, so what they said each of their positions were, what would be most helpful, Sameerah?
Tell me what they want to get out of this.
Okay. They wrote in their backgrounds. I don't think anyone wrote in, including me, what we want to get out of it, but so we have a child. First, I'll tell you the background of several of them, and then perhaps some of them can type in what they're hoping to get out of this session. But We have Jody, who's an early childhood community resource navigator, Mary, who's an occupational therapist in Goodhue County Education District, works birth to 3 early intervention. Anna Paulson, who's a Help Me Grow Region 11 coordinator. Carol Kay with the Minnesota Department of Health WIC program and WIC training coordinator. And we have Sarah, early intervention teacher for West Central Education District in Central Minnesota. And I can say in our discussions that we've had, I believe that most people are here generally, and they may have specific feedback on this, but to serve families better, to understand. I appreciated what you said about substance abuse. It is remarkably common. I think anyone who works with families is going to intersect with families that are affected by substance abuse. And I think everyone here wants to work to serve and support those families better.
And we know for a fact that in the times that we're going in right now, is much higher, and it's going to increase. So
I would agree.
How we communicate, how we uncover what's going on in a respectful and cultural way is what Acknowledge, Ask, and Adapt is. I have been using this tool in my training for years. I've been doing this work. I don't want to tell you, no, I will. But at least since the age of 35, and I'm 68 right now. And I just really think that it's important, next slide, please, how we interact. There's always going to be conflicting opinions due to our different values, tradition, messages, and historical trauma. Asking the right question, acknowledging there are difference in feelings, situations may call for a variety of opportunities, and discussions may just need to take place. Undercover individual biases is very important, as well as seeking to understand where the person, audience, your family is coming from is important and a learning opportunity. I want to say the cultural piece is very important. If you're working with a Native family, you continue working with them, but you find your referrals and you partner. And if the family says, I want to only partner with a Native person, you do that, because it's really not about us. It is about the child, the family, and well-being. And it's that way with all cultural groups, okay? But partnering, I think, is really awesome. I partner with everybody. The work that we have done would not have gotten here if I was not looking at every cultural group, including and European Americans. This is important. I do not shy away from that. Next slide, please. So when we're communicating, there's 2 things that can happen. You can be communicating and promoting more anxiety, or you can promote healing emotions. The anxieties, that fear, denial, hostility, blame, shame, guilt, you're not getting anywhere. You're just not. But if you can figure out how to communicate with humility and honesty and empathy and that advocacy, kindness, and grace, and then look for actions, and those actions may come from referrals. Build your referral portfolio. And I would recommend that you start building. If you don't have one, start building. If you have one, build onto it. It's really important right now. Okay. And it's important to meet them with behavior and language that is engaging and supportive. And that's where you're partnering with somebody helps you build that. Next slide, please. Cross-cultural communication, here's how you really build it. It's you in seeking knowledge. The first step is silence. Know that you don't have all the answers. Who wants all the answers? No one likes a know-it-all. So sometimes sit in silence. The second is listening. Listen so that you will be able to ask the right questions. The third is remembering not only what they said, but remembering who they are, their names. Remember those, because next time you see them, you want to be able to say, how is your baby? How is his older brother? How is grandma? I enjoyed visiting with grandma last time. You want to have that kind of rapport with your clients to move forward. because they love that. Family to all of us is important. The fourth is practicing everything you're learning, and practicing ask, acknowledge, and adapt is a key resource for you to practice. And then the last one is teaching others. So you can have a coffee club, whatever, go to lunch. This is what I learned today. Does anyone else have input? Build on it. Next slide, please. So the awareness, understanding ACEs and historical racism. And I think you guys have already had some training on that. I'm not sure, but understanding where that comes from. When people talk about historical racism, they're not just talking about Black people. There's a lot of people who have history of racism to build up one group and build down another. So then some groups that came into the United States started switching from their ethnicity just so they could fit in to not have to face the racism. So do your history on where it came from, who established it, what it's about, understand it so that you're not in this bubble of, I don't want to say ignorance, but this bubble of untruths about what it really is. And the mission is declaring pathways for all health. This is for everybody. Believe me, you guys, when I started doing the training, and I did some of my training up in northern Minnesota, and I said, look at you guys, this is what, years ago, I was 40 years old, 35. The children here, they're gonna come down to the city. They're not gonna just stay up here. You want them to be prepared to deal with all kinds of circumstances. Next slide, please. So we want to make sure we put in safety nets. That's what you're doing when you do the building your portfolio or building your skills on acknowledge, ask, and adapt. You want to prevent and manage, help people managing their chronic health issues before the family has a total fallout from toxic stress and ACEs. And you want to ensure access for Black and Brown mothers and the underserved community to services and places to voice their concerns. Serious focus on maternal health, perinatal to postpartum, really focus on that. Healthy mom, you'll have healthy babies, and we just got to keep it rolling so that they're ready for school. Then they have they understand their reading skills, they're ready for school, they're ready to go. Next slide, please. So time, please, because I want to share a story, something that happened to me, and I want feedback. How much time do I have?
About 14 minutes.
So
you can take a little more, Sameerah. I know Drake will be mad at me, but if you need 20, go ahead.
Well, let's see what I can do here.
I don't want you to be rushed.
So institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, is a form of racism that is embedded through laws and regulations. That's institutional racism. So it's in, it could be in government, it could be, how can we tie health and education together with community missions, and how can we do so? Okay, Jody, I'll try to get back to you, and I'll try to answer that, Jody. And if I don't get it, Jody, I'm going to get you an answer. Okay. So it's really built into our organizations and has been built in for just, hundreds of years. But it's time to stop playing with it. There's room for all of us. There's justice is justice. If you don't give justice out, I always feel like sometimes I cringe. It's like, they're not going to be just. Do they not know that this can backfire? Example. Drugs and guns years ago, back in the 60s, were dropped off in California in the trains. They just dropped it off. Look it up, you guys, in the Black neighborhood. Okay. It was the CIA. This is a fact. Where are drugs right now? They thought that the drugs were just going to wind up in the inner city. Drugs are in urban suburb, they're everywhere. Things backfire. Justice, is justice, and everybody should have it. And when I said I cringe, it's like, don't they know that how the earth, okay, I'm getting on a tangent and I'm sorry, but I'm just saying there's discrimination in criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, education, among others. And on here, it says it's hard to see racism when you're white because it looks like you will come out on top, but it always will backfire. And we have to open up our eyes, no matter who we are, especially when it comes to working with our children. We have to open up our eyes. Next slide, please. So the consequences are not minor. Institutional racism is defined as the racism perpetrated by social and political institutions. And again, it's repeating, such as schools, courts, military. Unlike racism perpetrated by individuals, institutional racism also refers to a systemic racism. Racism has the power to negatively affect the bulk of people belonging to a racial group. Institutional racism can be seen in areas of wealth and income, criminal justice, employment, healthcare, housing, education, and politics, among others. Next slide, please. The term institutional racism was first used in 1967 in the book Black Power, the Politics of Liberation, written by Stokely Carmichael, later known as Kwame Ture, and political scientist Charles B. Hamilton, who was a European American. The book delves into the core of racism in the United States and how the traditional political process can be reformed in the future. They assert, that while individual racism is often easily identifiable, institutional racism is not as easy to spot because it's more subtle in nature. Next slide, please. Okay, I have questions coming at me. I am going to, I think I'm going to slip this one. It'll be in your slides. Skip it.
And Sameerah, it looks like you're watching the chat, but I can hold these and read them. You just let me know. It looks like you're seeing when the questions come up.
We're going to go back to those.
Okay. Okay.
Just to get to them. So racism in medicine, I want you guys to read this. I want you to read what happened at Tuskegee. I want you to understand why when you're dealing with people of color, especially African Americans, they are skeptic, untrusting, and not easily brought into the fold. So please read that on slide 33 when you get a chance. Next slide. I'm also showing you the determinants of health, income, social support, employment, physical environments, education, healthy child development, biologic and genetic endowment, health services, personal health practices, and coping skills. Next slide, please. Social terms of health, next slide. Again, you see there's triggers, that racism and biases sends triggers for people, which that's why we have low weight births for African American and Native American babies. Minnesota, some of the highest in the nation, infant morbidity, and we have a mental health crisis going on. And so we see that circulation going there, expertise, experiences. We want healthy outcomes. We need to do exploration. And so we're looking at the exposures, and it's going to take all of us to really work on women, family, and poor health outcomes. Next slide, please. So you have individual growth. I want to share a story with you. I think what I'd like to do first, go to the chat. I want to hear their questions. I want to see if my story I'm going to share will have anything.
So I'm going to start with Jody's question, Sameerah. Jody asked, how can we tie health and education together in our community missions? And how can we do some of that focusing on early intervention, acceptance, and promotion?
I want to go back to that one tool that the way you tie it into your mission is really to understand ACEs and to really tie your communication with me. I think I kind of laid that there. You have to understand and be aware of what is affecting the families, how it is affecting the families, what policies, and I can't remember who Jody is with. Can you tell me again?
Yes, I will. Jody is with, Jody probably could type it in faster than I could say, but Jody is with Early Childhood Community Resource Navigator. I bet she typed it in too.
Okay.
Cook County.
Okay. I want you to know, Jody, what we are doing at AABC, we have a 5-pronged system, and that's what we're building in for systemic change. And in the 5-prong, we are working and making and hoping that childcare providers, childcare centers, healthcare workers all go through the 5-prong of perinatal care, that everybody is doing home visiting, but we are doing one that is designed by Nija Robinson with Simpson Housing on correct entering and etiquettes going into homes of color, how you communicate with them. We have it on, Pat is coming in. We have the FFN curriculum that we're working on crisis and going beyond crisis. We're tying that into the ACEs. So we have a 5-prong. That's one way to build in your understanding and you're building your skills. But also you must, FFN is family, friend, and neighbor. That's right. You must understand, I believe, ACEs. That is key to building it into your policies. What's the next question? You're welcome, Jody.
And Jody says, thank you. And then Sarah asks, could you please share some differences in how African Americans provide childcare, or basically specific things that one would find in most African American childcare settings? And Sarah is from, if context is helpful, once again, I bet she'll type faster than I do, early intervention teacher for West Central Education District in Central Minnesota.
So, Sarah, what I'm going to recommend is that you do a field trip. If you're out of school right now, if your school is shut down, I would contact some of those childcare centers. They're all going to be different. All of the makeup of the people and how they communicate is going to be so different. If you want to go in and just visit with them, see how they offer, how they interact with the children, I would do it that way. I cannot tell you how, I can tell you how I communicate with the childcare providers and children, but you have to do observation, and I always say put the elbow grease in, right? Build your relationship with some of those centers and some of those African American teachers, and do the acknowledge, ask, and adapt. Do that tool.
Sameerah, can I build on that question just a little?
Sure.
Most of our participants on the call work in early intervention in some way. Some are community navigators, but as we talk about, and I heard you say that you're a proponent of early supports, but sometimes what would help early intervention providers understand respectful ways that you approach a family and talk about that? Because I know that can mean different things to different families, different communities, particularly when we're thinking about assessing very young children, or bringing in services and supports. And maybe there's sometimes well-intended approaches that don't culturally resonate with families, or language we use, or does that question make sense?
It does. And so again, it's about building trust. I cannot give you that roadmap on how you're going to build trust.
Yep.
Other than that, sitting down and even explaining to the parents or parent, this is not my cultural background. I don't want to be disrespectful. If I say anything that is, please excuse me, and I give you the, I will listen if you need to correct me. And you have to start building the trust first. If you don't have that trust and you're going in cold turkey, it more than likely is not going to work out. That's one. And again, how are you partnering with other people of color? It's like in my early years, it was like everybody seemed to feel like, how do I say this? It's like, if I just stay in my box with African-American people and never venture out to communicate with other people, I'm not going to learn it. I'm not going to learn a doggone thing, right? So you have to get in there and do the work. And you have to build relationships and know how to take a communication class, find somebody who you really respect and you have good rapport with, start working on it. Get to work. Nothing's easy.
Thank you.
I don't know, Jen, did that help?
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's no roadmap. There's no shortcut. You've got to do the work. You've got to build the relationships. But I do think it is helpful when you share, how you come into a space, because I think all of us as professionals, you're going to have that experience where you walk into a space where you don't share the background of the family and you're there to learn. I liked your slide on, listen, learn, ask questions. I mean, those are good frameworks and they'll get the slides. Just sort of
know when you need to exit, that you just are not doing it, and find the referral for them. So was there another question?
No, I was just listening to you and agreeing.
Okay. So I just want to share something that happened to me. I was at Cup Foods 2 days ago. I drove past a car. A girl was laying outside the car on the ground, and I watched the other girls get out of the car and go around. And then I saw the girl lift up her head. I kept driving. I parked. And other people, I don't know, everybody was parking and ignoring it. So as I was walking by, the girl said, "I can't believe nobody hasn't stopped to help me and see what's wrong with me." And I was perturbed. So I turned back around and I went to her and I said, "You want to know why nobody stopped?" I said, "Because they're laughing now," right? When the girl said she's laughing, I said, "Because there's people dying in the world. There's people that are being bombed. There's people being killed on the street. And there's no time to play." And she said, "Well, my friends just drove up in a driveway of somebody's house. The whole family was out there. And I was so embarrassed." And she's laughing. That's why she fell out of the car. She was embarrassed. I was even more perturbed. And I thought, she's tone deaf and unprivileged. That's all. She was embarrassed. Okay. So I want to ask all of you, and I want to say she was European American, teenage, but what she said after I talked to them, and I said, "I'm talking to all of you and myself. We have to be considerate of what's going on in the world and who really does have problems." And then the young lady said to me, "So I'm all right? I'm okay then?" And I was still floored. So I'd sure like to know you guys' reaction, because that has to do with how people perceive things, how people feel that they're lonely, and how we're raising our kids to understand that the importance of people are facing ACEs every day. And people of color will say, "I face," and this is true, "I face racism every single day." So I should be curious if you want to drop it in the chat or say it out loud, that would be cool with me. And then I'm going to get out of you guys this way. I'm curious. I'm hoping that my discussion today is in line with staying informed and open and empathetic, which I felt the young lady was not. That I was easy describing the practice of ask, acknowledge, and adapt. That you understand what disrupts families when healthcare workers don't honor their values and experiences, the importance of valuing diversity, workplace modeling, respect and appropriate interactions, help with attitudes toward provided to the community, and know what community inequalities have to do with you. Keep going, Drake. Thank you. And then the next slide. So, oh, one back. So, our key takeaways is building on inclusive care, communication, embrace cooperation, constructing authentic partnerships, diminishing social determinants of healthcare that are disrupting families in a purposeful and mindful manner, guidelines on structuring training platforms which inspire every young adult of childcare bearing age. That's what we really work on. Healthcare workers, clinics, and organizations in Minnesota to be informed of birth outcomes in Black and Brown communities as one of the highest in the country, and ensuring low birth weights and or infant deaths are not the status quo, should say not, and guidelines on shaping networks which identify voices, emphasize actions from those suffering from economic, underprivileged, poor health conditions, establishing more training to inspire engagement rather than avoidance on transformation and inclusion, driving new strategies. So did anybody write anything in the chat, Jen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I think they're listening attentively to your takeaways, and then we can chat a little.
Okay. So and then the last one is really important, resources. We right now, it's going to be online very soon. It'll be in YouTube, and these cards will be passed out to centers and places that are working with families. And then there's a cartoon presentation that kind of writes all this out. And it is, did you know? It's very important. Ramsey County Birth Equity Community Council are very helpful, and they have a mom and dad's club, which is really good. And then the Cultural Wellness Center and Roots and North Point Medical Center, Open Cities Medical Center, Minnesota Community Cares, we all work together. Everyday Miracles, I think all of you know that if you know any mothers, anybody who's getting ready to have a baby and they need a doula, they can either go to Cultural Wellness Center or Everyday Miracles and find a doula. And then I already said the Department of Labor, Women's Economic Stability Association is what is behind this top purple card that will be going out. Next slide, please. And so thank you very much. You know where to find me. African American Babies Coalition and projects at Amherst Wilder Foundation. Did anybody type anything in, or should I get out of you guys' way?
Oh, no, you're fine, Sameerah. I think they're absorbing it and thinking through. Thank you so much. I have a couple, and you're getting some thank yous in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put you on the spot, and I know there's not a roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there's not a manual. It's about building relationships and listening and asking.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I wonder, with your expertise and wisdom, when you walk into, for example, a childcare center, an early intervention center, what are some of the key ingredients you see to know that it's a family-centered and culturally sensitive? I mean, what are some things you notice when you see a system, and it can be wherever, but a system that is responsive to families and meeting their needs and is sensitive to their cultural needs? What are some things you notice?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. One of my favorite childcare centers is University of Minnesota.
Oh, thank you. I have nothing to do with it, but I will take they are good.
I honestly had such a wonderful experience there, but it is a center of privilege also.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what made it so wonderful. The funding, you guys have that. Now, put all that aside. For me, I need to see, I'm just going to tell you, I need to see clean children without snot coming down their nose, where they're not crying, where I see them laughing, where I see that they have enough caregivers around them, where I see that the books are so relatable.
Yeah.
When I hear that parents really want to be part of that family, of people, that's really important for me. Now, one more thing I didn't tell you guys. AABC is building into, right now we have 2 child care centers. One is in a school and one is a child care center. And we're building in a library for early childhood, ran by the children. And we have different people that are working with us. Literally, we want it to look like a library. Literacy is so important in every child care center to make sure that their books not only go home with them, but come back. So we have a whole program system. So literacy must be, for me, a #1 priority for our children to be successful in their lifelong journey through school. I hope that answered it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I think Sarah had a question. Sarah wanted to know, does the African American Babies Coalition offer any outstate resources? Of course, recognizing they would need to be in larger communities. So I think the main question is, does the African American Babies Coalition offer any outstate resources?
Sarah, I need to know a little bit more. Now, AABC is a statewide. We go statewide, we do the training, we do the baby bag statewide, African. I think what you need to do is give us a call directly.
Sameerah, can you put your email in the chat? Because I know sometimes, is it in the, or just put in that, I know sometimes people like following up with our speaker afterwards, or almost everyone on the call is supporting families. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Okay.
There? Did you find it?
I see it. It's right in the middle.
Where? I don't know.
Sameerah. I know. It sort of camouflages in, but there it is. Okay. So it sounds like people could reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And because a lot of our participants are in greater Minnesota, if they want to utilize the resources or learn more or serve families better,
absolutely,
there's an educational component and a resource component.
Absolutely.
Well, Sameerah, thank you so much. I appreciated that there was just so much food for thought in this, and you gave both context, historical context, but also family and community, and then strategies. We know there's not a manual, but you gave us a lot of tools for how all of us can improve our practice and work better with families. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. This is you're one of our return speakers, and we so appreciate you coming back to us. So
I feel honored to be brought back.
Yes.
Everybody have a wonderful, I think it's going to be a nice weekend.
I think it is. Enjoy. Be well, and thank you so much, Sameerah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Drake, you can forward. You may notice the time. It's 3:55. We have a family story prepared, but I do not think we have time necessarily. I can read it very, very quickly because I need to check the box that we did a case study, and we can just sort of think about it and absorb it. Rebecca wrote this, and Rebecca wanted me to send her best wishes to everyone. She's not feeling well today. But Rebecca wrote this. I'll read it really quickly, and you can sort of have a thought discussion in your own mind about it. Feel free to email me if you want to talk about it. But Rebecca did write this. It's Samantha and GIONNA. Samantha is a 34-year-old woman with a substance use disorder, was a foster child and dependent on opioids by age 18. She meets Jules, a hospital social worker who tries to support her recovery, but no beds were available. That is very common in Minnesota. I think many of us know. Samantha gives birth to Gianna, who has NOWS and is moved to foster care because Samantha is homeless. Losing her daughter to foster care causes her to lose Medicaid benefits and become ineligible for most detox or rehab programs. Samantha is left to recover in the streets while her daughter is in foster care. Here's a quote, I need treatment. I've lived my entire life surrounded by drug use, and I can't do this by myself in this community. I need help to detox. That is a quote from Samantha. Next slide. Samantha and Jules work together to wean her off substances, but she's unable to fully abstain. Beds remain unavailable. 2 years later, a bed becomes available at a detox center, and Samantha has been substance-free ever since. She secures a job and starts classes to become a recovery coach. And we had someone who does a lot of recovery work as one of our guests and works with other families. For 5 years, Gianna remains in foster care and unable to see her mother. She's been without a parent, which have a lifelong impact on her future physical, social, and emotional health. I guess, and I see what changes to the above described systems would have allowed Gianna and the mom, Samantha, every opportunity to stay together. What systems does your community offer families seeking recovery? And do you know where they can go? Yeah, and Jody commented, this is a heartbreaking story. Why can't she stay with her child through foster care? Yeah, I don't disagree. I think this is a heartbreaking story, not uncommon. We're really working. We had was it Dr. Precker was talking about some of the systems changes to try and keep families together, rooming in from the beginning. Babies need their moms, even if they are using or in recovery, and systems are really trying to work to support families staying together. So I don't know where Rebecca got this particular case. It may be from a few years back, but I think it certainly gives us, Jody, and anyone who has questions, some pause to think about how can systems do better by families and how cycles are perpetuated, cycles of poverty and addiction. Yeah, and this also touches upon quite a bit of what we've talked about around, I think every speaker we had talked about ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and certainly we see that both Samantha and now Gianna have a lot of those. And so if we don't treat the substance abuse and treat and work with the whole family and support them, we're looking at some difficult long-term outcomes from one generation to the next. And then Sarah said, completely aside from the fact that this is a tragic story, as a foster parent, I do believe that Gianna has had a parent this whole time, but maybe she's been bounced to several settings. Yeah, possibly. If Rebecca were here, she could tell us a little more. So we're left to kind of wonder. But again, that many of us work in systems, and really how can systems do better to serve children and families? I wish we had more time. I want to respect your time, and we have 2 minutes left. When we did this before, I will tell you, we did an hour and a half. We gave our speakers an hour, and then we had a half hour for all of the additional. I think that I'll be curious if you want to put that in your evaluation, how you felt about the timing, because I do feel like we've been rushed these series, but we also wanted to be respectful of your time. We so appreciate all of you for coming. I know people tend to drop off at the end, but it's really meant a lot to us to get to know many of you and for you to take your time to learn. I think every day in the news, we hear how the opioid epidemic continues to affect our country and communities and families in profound ways. The pandemic has only amplified the challenges around this issue. And so we hope that you were able to benefit from the information we shared, to learn some new things. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. We hope we may be able to do one more series in September. We'd bring in some new speakers, but some of the ones that people also enjoyed. But please know you will be receiving your RegCap survey about this session. Feel free to share your thoughts, additional speaking topics you might be interested. We offer certificates of participation for those of you who need to read licensure, and it will be coming. But today is our last day. And from Drake, myself, and Rebecca and Courtney, we just want to thank all of you, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Feel free to reach out. I will put my email in the chat. I'd love for any of you to reach out and let us know what you liked about it, and just how you're integrating it into your work. That is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jody, for your comments. Mary, I've seen you on these. All of you, I've seen you frequently. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we just want to thank you, and feel free to reach out. I will put my email in the chat, but thank you for your time and have a wonderful summer.